Good morning. It's Thursday. I'm Pete Najarian. This is The Take for Market Rebellion. And let me tell you something about yesterday. What an interesting day we had yesterday. We talked about the day before where we had that sell-off, that sharp sell-off in the final. That was the theme for a long period of time, that last hour or so of the trading session and some of those moves. Well, yesterday was actually a pretty interesting day. This was an earnings lollapalooza. It was a lot of fun yesterday. We had a lot of stocks on the move. We had names like Starbucks and AMD and Boeing and GE and some of the biggest names and a lot of different movements shifting throughout the day. And AMD absolutely stole the show in terms of the run up that it had, the run after the Intel numbers and the delays, and then the extended run even after that, when it came to the earnings and the release of that. So that was something that really was moving markets, specifically in the NASDAQ, because relatively flat opening, call it, but then very quickly the market started to shift and started to run to the upside, and the NASDAQ was up about 1% early on, about 100 points. So nice, sharp, quick move, but it was helped out, not just AMD. PayPal was moving to the upside. By the way, PayPal is moving again today, up and through. It hit new highs today of 198. We had some of that call buying not too terribly long ago in PayPal. It was a three-way call buying situation that was very, very bullish, very large. They went all the way out into August. Well, they're getting some nice numbers today. As a matter of fact, I'm part of that and probably going to trim out of some of that myself. But it's not just that. It's Baidu, it's Starbucks, it was Apple, Microsoft, Cisco, Tesla, Amazon, Facebook, Juniper, you name it. We had a nice move yesterday in terms of the NASDAQ and definitely outpacing the Dow in terms of the percentage move. Nice big move. Biotech, on the other hand, wasn't really participating, and that was something that, that had been part of that broad move for the NASDAQ, was the biotech end of things that was moving. Well, biotech was not participating yesterday. Amgen, Regeneron, Moderna, all those names pulling those markets to the downside. You look over at the XBI or the IBB, and you can see exactly what I was talking about yesterday. XBI was down about 1.7%. What was actually moving to the upside, obviously because of AMD and some of those names in the chip sector, the semiconductors, the SMH had a really nice day. It was up about 2% early on. You had the tech CEOs. Everybody was waiting on the tech CEOs. That got delayed yesterday. That was something that everybody was waiting with anticipation just to hear from the big four as they had to get up there for their testimony. Well, midday, testimony hadn't quite started yet. We had the Dow up about 95 points, the NASDAQ up a little over 100 points. Dow closed up about 160 points. The NASDAQ closed up about 140 points, about 1.3% on the NASDAQ, about doubling that of the move percentage-wise of the Dow. So a nice move there. Volatility continues to be in place at about, call it 24 and a half yesterday where we closed. Actually, we talked about this as well, the fact that we've seen this contraction in the movement. So we're seeing also a contraction in the movement within the VIX itself. 24 to 27, that seems to be about the range. We're testing that range today. I'll get to that in just 1 minute. But derivatives world was absolutely on fire yesterday. You look at AMD and we look at these volumes once in a while just from an interest perspective to find out how much volumes and what's really trading and some of that percentage of the calls and puts. All that being said, a lot of that is meaningless, folks, because you want to know, are they buying or are they selling? And if it's mixed, then that's less of a tell altogether. So that's something that we focus on. That's part of the unusual option activity is we are dissecting trades. We aren't just looking at volumes. We're looking at volumes of buyers or volumes of sellers and how to interpret some of those numbers at times, whether that's on the calls or the puts. You also had that Kodak story, which has been absolutely extraordinary. The volumes there off the charts, absolutely. When you look at the explosive Monday, and then it's just continued for the rest of the week on that huge move that we've seen out of Kodak. So we also had some great moves. You looked at L Brands up 35%, AMD up about 12%, PayPal, like I say, up about 4.5%. Financials had a pretty good day yesterday. Well, take all that back because today we're seeing a bit of a sell-off. As a matter of fact, the sell-off started early. We were down about 200 points early on and holding right in those levels all throughout the pre-market part of the day. And that was something that really did stand out. So there was pressure, a lot of different things. But one of the things that really affected some of that pressure was when we got those jobless claims. And some of the big economic numbers absolutely moving things. And you got to look at the stimulus package and what's going to be happening there. You got $1 trillion on one side. You got $3 trillion on the other side. Are they going to be able to work out some kind of a deal? That's something everybody is watching very, very closely as we go through all these numbers. So early on, down about 400 points. I'm just doing a refresh. We're about just barely less than an hour into the day. Now we're down about 500 points on the Dow. So call it 2% move to the downside. On the other hand, look at the NASDAQ. It's down about 125 points. Sounds huge, but that's a little over a 1% move as opposed to the 2% move that you're seeing right now in the Dow. So what's really pulling things right now? Take a look at some of these energy stocks. Take a look at ExxonMobil. Take a look at Chevron. Take a look at some of these financials. The financials really struggling early on. You look at the Travelers and JP Morgans and Goldman Sachs and American Express. Those are all getting hit to the downside, all feeling a little bit of pain today. There's still some winners out there. And look over at Qualcomm. And we talk about the semiconductors, it seems like each and every day. Really looked at Intel and how terrible that was, how good things were for AMD. Qualcomm, really good. Qualcomm up early, about 10, 11% early on. O'Reilly was up pretty strong as well. PayPal, I mentioned that already, having a nice day, actually hit up to 198. It's pulled back off of that. It's getting pulled down with the markets a little bit as the markets are starting to sell off even a little bit more with an accelerated pace. But energy really is the story of the day in terms of what's getting hit the hardest. So you look over at the XLE and you see it down about 3.5%. You expect to see the OIH following suit. Not really seeing that today. But when you look at the XLE, I'm looking at ConocoPhillips right now down about 8%, Exxon down about 4%, Chevron down about 4%. You get the idea. Valero, HollyFrontier, majority of these names actually in the energy space getting hit to the downside. Throw in the financials as well, hit to the downside. But what's hanging in there? I just brought it up that yesterday they weren't participating, the biotechs. The biotechs actually are hanging in there. As a matter of fact, you look over at a couple of those names, they're in positive territory. As one of the indexes, the XBI, I believe, was the one that was in the green, the IBB, very close. So some back and forth going on. There's no doubt about it. But generally, we are seeing a pretty big, sharp sell-off to the downside. As I say, down about 5.25. So what is the unusual option activity for today? I'm looking at Tower Semiconductor. You ever heard of it? Because I really haven't. and that's what makes it even more unusual. But TSEM is a symbol there. It popped up because here I'm looking at the markets. I'm seeing markets that are getting sold off. You're seeing a lot of pressure. You're seeing a lot of put buying. We are seeing almost all negative right now. Bearish paper early on, less than an hour into the trading day, as I said. Yet we see some bulls coming in. Makes a little bit of sense. Semiconductors have been on fire. So why wouldn't there be a little bit of paper that might be bullish here? So Tower Semi. 2150 is about where the stock was trading. Buyers of the August 22 calls. They were going for 30 cents up to about $1, and then they were actually also buying out to January. January 35 calls being bought, about 3,000 of those. So you see a little bit of aggressive moves there. That makes some sense, but especially the near term and the longer term. And that, boy, does that play into the theme. We were talking about how we've been short term in terms of 1 week, 2 week, 3 week out options, that we've seen a lot of this unusual activity. But I also mentioned the other day, we've seen a couple of days now where we've seen going out to fall months, going out to January, going further out on the chain, and not everything being a 1 week, 2 week, 3 week expiration. We are seeing some of that. We've seen 2-day type expirations where they're buying this week and they're expiring on Friday. Really, really short term. That's not the case here. So you're seeing that in Tower Semi. You're seeing the August and the January calls being bought. Those Januaries, they're pretty high up there. Those are really interesting to see something that's getting bought that far out of the money. That definitely stands out. So recovered a little bit just in this couple of minutes. Dow down now about 450 points. I'm just hitting a little refresh. Down about 450 points. NASDAQ down about 100 points, so 1% there. S&P down about 46, and we've got a VIX trading 27.76. So that range, 24 to 27, well, looks like that's where we are. 24 and a half, call it, to 28. Maybe that's the new range. But a little bit of a slide up. Now, we've talked about a lot of the unusual option activity that we've seen for a very long period of time. You've got to understand it. You've got to have knowledge. If you've got that knowledge, you have a much better ability to have some success in the future if you want to be involved in the derivatives markets. Get the knowledge, though. You have to understand how the options work, why they work in certain ways, what are some of the historical, everything that you need to know, you want to know. So you've got to really have a full understanding so you can have a better opportunity for some success. Just got a text. I'm seeing it right now. I will see you on the halftime report today towards the bottom of the hour, commenting on one of the upgrades and downgrades that we're seeing today. I won't really let the rest of that get out of the bag, but you could maybe guess it's a Minnesota company that I talk about often. Guys, have a great day of trading.